Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Selling AI. Today, we're diving into the world of RevOps, the function that's quietly becoming the backbone of every AI-powered go-to-market motion. I have Chantelle Herschel on the show today, and she is a RevOps leader with over a decade of experience in the space. She recently made the jump to Asana Benefits after a long run at Hawkridge Systems. Here's where we're focused on today. Chantelle's been in the trenches building systems from scratch, and she has some really strong opinions on what actually works and what a RevOps leader should be focused on. In particular, she really looks at items like cost to value ratio when she's looking at software evaluation. She's heavy into flowcharts, everything about lead routing. From the outside looking in, lead routing seems like it would be simple. It is not. So we're going to dive into a little bit of that today. She also has a strong view as to the future of what revenue operations should look like. So we're going to talk about the system she's put in place in her first year at Asana, how she evaluates new tools, and what vendors get wrong when selling into someone like her in her seat. So, all right, let's get into it. Hey, Chantelle, thank you so much for being here today, talking about RevOps and AI. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Warren, for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So first, give us a little bit about your background, your transition at Hawkridge Systems into like a revenue operations role, your evolution there, and then like how things are going at your first 6 months at Asana Benefits.
Yeah, sounds good. It's funny, I actually have a degree in international relations. That's what my degree's in. It's not actually in business. But I graduated in the tail end of 2012, which was the very end of the recession. I'm sure you remember. And I
Yeah.
took a job at a little company called Quest Integration that was, I found it on Craigslist. And it said you
Wow.
needed Microsoft skills. And I said to myself, I have Microsoft skills. And I actually got the job because I'd gone to high school with the owner's son, and he remembered me, and it was a good high school. So he took a chance on me, even with my international
Nice.
relations degree. Well, that company eventually did get bought out by Hawkridge Systems. So it looks on my resume like I've been there for about 12 years because it was essentially like a very linear career path there. When I was at Quest, I got to uh, play around in Goldmine CRM, which if you've ever heard of Goldmine, it is like an ancient CRM that was on a like physical server. And I got to help us migrate for the first time to Salesforce. And we didn't do that until like 2016.
Wow.
And I ended up learning how to build just tons of things. I had full control over the system. I got to play. And then we got acquired by Hawkridge, and I joined as pretty much their marketing operations leader because I do love MOPS. Like MOPS is always going to have this deep spot in my soul. And at the time, that MOPS team did cover lead routing, and it just eventually naturally progressed when they wanted a RevOps leader to take on the sales ops team too. So took that in. And it was one of those moments where Hawkridge is a great company, but I kind of realized like I probably need more industry experience in other areas, and it's time to just like spread my wings a little bit. I'm only 35, so pretty young to have been already a director for a few years, and I realized that if probably wasn't going to retire there, and so it was time to do things. And it was hard to get a new job with 12 years on your resume, which feels odd because when we were younger, we were taught, hey, you're supposed to stay and loyalty will be rewarded. And it was at like staying there, but it was harder to get a new job. Like people weren't convinced I was ready to move on. But Sana did take me, and it's been a great experience. Totally different world, right? We're in like a startup space now. Very different than an established 20 plus year company at Hawkridge. Smaller team again. I really enjoy that 100-person-ish uh, state of a company. There's a lot more pivoting you can do rapidly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been great. So that's kind of been my career journey for the last 12 years. It's crazy.
That's awesome. Yeah. It may seem kind of foreign. And so I'm 40, so just like I'd say 5 or 6 years ahead of you. Same deal. I went to college. You just thought about going into a corporate role, and I got my first job at UPS. And I thought I was gonna be the CEO of UPS. I thought I'd be there for 40 years, right? Like that was just like that's kind of the baseline default. Like it was almost like Leave It to Beaver in 2005, right? Like it didn't make any sense, right? I feel like I don't know that that's shifted entirely for college. I assume they go into the workforce understanding that their first role they'll probably transition in 2 years, right?
I think they do because, I mean, part of it was my dad retired from the same company uh,
Right.
after like however long he'd been there for
Yeah.
forever. And so I had that mentality. But I remember like when I watched people negotiate for like salaries and like not take jobs the first time, like when the people who came not in the middle of the recession came out, like, and then they were leaving and like going up to other ones. I was like so confused.
Right.
But yes, I would say that, I mean, you see on people's profiles now like exit counts in the
Yeah.
startup space, and it's just a completely different thing. The average, I think, millennial is like 2 years max.
Yeah. Yeah. It's how you get job pay increases now. It's just switching, right? It's a whole different
Mhm.
world. But I still get when I'm coaching folks, I'm like, job like finding and seeking and just career placement. Everyone's still worried about looking like a job hopper. And I'm like, listen, I don't like that's never come up. As long as you're not leaving
Yeah.
every 4 months, right? Like every
Yeah.
2 years, especially in sales, where like the average tenure of a rep is like 2.3 years. The average tenure of a CRO and like growth sales is like 1.8 years. 2 year stint like isn't job hopping anymore. It's like which has its pros and cons, but it's funny to think that like that wasn't how it always looked like. It doesn't seem like that now. It seems like it's ridiculous to think that you would be at Quest
A place
for
for
40
any job.
years, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, there's no pensions. There's no the
no,
things
right?
that
I
existed
lost a
then.
pension. I had one. They cut pensions when I was at UPS, and then they bought me out of it. So like I had a pension, right? Like, but
Yeah.
there's RSUs is the only thing that's holding anyone to anything anymore, right? Restricted
Yeah.
stock.
It's
So
just, yeah.
I I digress. That's fantastic. So great. So you've moved on to a new company. So like it's interesting because so then Sana was like kind of your first like how do I analyze what I should be working on first, right? Like kind of role, right? Like you just kind of like grown with Quest and Hawkridge. Like now you're at a new role. What was your first 3 months like? How did you analyze what your priorities should be? And like what were those priorities? What did you figure out?
Yeah. So, I mean, there is like, I think sometimes, RevOps loves to come in and say, don't build a dashboard. Like, that's like a big language thing online right now with it. It's not just dashboards. And like, that is true. But if like they don't even have like basic dashboards, they do need those to see what they're doing.
Right.
So, I had to do a lot of basics. So I set up some dashboards that were more effective. I built in forecasting, like I turned on the forecasting model in Salesforce, kind of got those goals entered, did some of those things that were, that might seem basic, but I think that often in RevOps, we think it has to be this shiny, like, overhaul. But sometimes, like, the basics and the solids and, like, getting those into place, especially if you're in, like, a company that's been in rapid growth, you need to go in and, like, clean up some of the cobwebs and, like, structure things correctly. Um, and get the base ready for all those bigger projects that you want to do later. And so we did a lot of that, right? We did a lot of like analyzing how things are flowing. I looked at processes. I did basic things like I went and watched some of my team enter data. And I was like, why do we have all these fields? And so deleting those fields. And we intend to do an even bigger overhaul of that pretty soon um, because Sauna's changed how it's done business dramatically since it first started. And there's a lot of stuff in there that just doesn't need to be there anymore. And so did a lot of that. They were in the middle of, they knew they wanted to decommission Gainsight because it was just too expensive for what it was worth. And so we had to like talk about that and rebuilding all of like those flows in there into the new system. I also like that meant that I was reading emails that hadn't been like really evaluated for a while and working with the marketing team to get those updated and look good again and that helped the marketing team already wanted to do a little bit of like an updated look and so it gave them the opportunity to do that across the board and like have consistent branding, which I think some people think that RevOps, again, they often think RevOps is just sales ops, but it's not. I got deeply involved with the marketing team almost immediately when I joined because I think it's important that you're
Okay.
connecting all the pieces there, right? And then we have lots of different aspects of our business. And so I was kind of just up in everybody's business, asking what they were up to and how I could help. And but yeah, a lot of watching, a lot of small fixes that made lots of like pain points go away.
Right.
Um, yeah.
That's awesome. So when I talk to RevOps leaders, I hear the same thing all the time. They are in a new role, or let's say they're consulting or they're in engagement, and it's immediately like a dashboard exercise, right? Like I don't know who's saying don't talk about dashboards. I'm not in that Reddit thread, but but on top of like it's always this, right? Like it's either that they don't have it or they're not looking at the right numbers. And when they're not looking at the right numbers, like drastically so, not like a little bit around the fringe, right? Like this is why do you think that is? Every leader comes in and says that, does it, and then like there's no one that you go in and you're like, oh, this has been done. Why do you think there's that gap? Either it's not happening or like it's just not correct.
I think there's like two sides of it, and I've done massive dashboard builds that were like these complex things, and I was like, yes.
Yeah.
And then I've had people not use them.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think that the thing I think that's always interesting about RevOps, and that can be almost tough, is that you in general are, as a RevOps leader, looking at more of a full scope picture of the business, right? So you're looking at those pitfalls in certain areas. And so like sometimes RevOps leaders just go build the dashboard that they think makes sense and doesn't like make sense to anybody else,
Right.
and they'll try to force it. I've definitely done that. And those numbers probably are important, but you haven't convinced anybody that those are important, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Like
Right.
they're worried about, you know, like how many hot leads there were, and and it's almost more about looking at what the other team across the way did rather than
Yeah.
like your own success rate.
Hmm.
And so, I've had that happen where you're building these dashboards that are about like proving which team's doing what wrong, right?
Yeah.
Those can happen. And then sometimes I think they don't listen to their sales leaders or their marketing leaders about what's actually important. That happens too, I think, a fair amount of the time. And so they didn't even try to hear it. I also think that the biggest gap with dashboards is there's usually too much information.
Right. Yeah.
I try to get people to believe in like a big five, right? Like pick the five metrics that matter. And you can have like additional graphs. Like in my perfect dashboards, like there's like five big metrics across the top and then like breakdowns by rep or whatever below it. But
Yeah.
like, what are the metrics that you're actually going to look at? And I think I saw it in an article once, and it was like people become consumed by data. Like they have data and they just want to have more and they want to have more and they want to have more and they want to have more. But why? And
Right.
that's where like that was a big when I read that article was like a big like hit point for me of like if your dashboard isn't driving you to change your behavior, then what's the point?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of dashboards when you're talking about them, all that to say that was a long rambling way of saying like most of the time dashboards don't get built to drive behavior. They're built
Right.
just to look at numbers. And
Right.
that shouldn't be what they're doing. They need to
Yeah. It's almost like,
drive behavior.
yeah, like you're doing it because you are worried that there's going to be like a number that's hidden that no one knows about. That's like the holy grail number. Something's going wrong and you don't know about it. But really, like you need to treat your leadership team, both sales, but more so the non-sales leaders around, like you would treat like early reps. You don't go and implement the most complex methodologies early on. You make sure they know how to do discovery, right? So in the same token, a RevOps leader like yourself to get like hired, they want you to have a long-term vision as to how to guide the organization towards the right paths to the best revenue, right? So you come in and you do that, but like oftentimes, like people don't understand the simple relationship between pipe generation and win rates and how that impacts, right? Like, great, like you have a 60-day sales cycle, you're at 4x pipe and your win rate's at 18%, right? Like those numbers are going to show that you're not going to hit your target, right? So we're like, or it's like, great, no, we don't have a pipeline problem, we have 9x pipeline. Well, listen, like a 30-year deals have been in flow for 450 days and you have a 60-day sales cycle, right? So it's like the simplest. And that honestly, like even sales leadership doesn't fully grasp in a way that makes sense. And then you come in and be like, great, like rep efficiency and LTV to CAC 3 years from now is much better on inbound pipeline and partner referrals. And then and so like that combination doesn't necessarily work well. So I wonder, like, there's a crawl, walk, run situation where like you're brought in to run, but not often. With leadership, you assume you can run right away, but honestly, you probably need to crawl. It's pretty simple how pipe and win rate works. And I still have to explain it all the time. Does that
And I
seem fair, or am I off base anywhere
Oh,
there?
I think it's super fair. And I think to some extent, RevOps is still viewed not as strategically as it should be
Right.
um,
Agreed.
to help drive those numbers, right? So your RevOps leader might build something that says this is a problem, but sales leaders have decided that that doesn't matter, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I think even they might even understand it logically, but they may not understand the full scope of that picture or like where RevOps will point out areas of like change. Like I've noticed that because RevOps people aren't sales people, there's an assumption that they can't help make choices that
Right.
can help guide the business, and they don't think of them as strategic partner. They think of them as just an execution like
Right.
driven person. And I've seen it both ways, right? Like, and I think people are trying and they're seeing that shift, but it's in the name, right? You're not revenue strategist, you're revenue operator.
Operations, right? It's interesting. Maybe we should change the name. I actually had this mini debate with someone on my team the other day, but we'll, that the name, it's just a naming problem that we're worried with. It's actually interesting then, and I hadn't thought of this, like revenue, RevOps. I think maybe, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, most RevOps leaders don't treat it as a change management exercise for leadership in the way that they should, right? They assume that they should be literate in what you're talking about and run to the full picture. When really, as soon as I land in as a sales leader, I assess the skills of the sales team and I implement a program that honestly, I want to implement 6 programs, but no one can take on. They can't understand how to do good discovery, how to prospect, how to have full industry knowledge and run medic when none of them have kind of done that theory across the board. I can't throw that much at them. But from a leadership standpoint, you don't have the same mindset. You think you could throw it at them. It seems like we should, again, you get into a new RevOps role and it's, again, you have to kind of like walk, where are they at now? What's their RevOps literacy and how do I get them farther? Right. That's kind of like an interesting problem.
And what about, and what's their expectation of the situation
Right.
too, right? Because at the whole time, you're also being asked to do things. And more RevOps is sitting underneath sales leaders who are like, no, I need you to like
Yeah. Fix
move
Salesforce.
things and you
Yeah.
need
Right. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
prove that you're making things happen for the sales leaders that you're interacting with. And that can be tricky because you do need a paycheck and so you
Right.
need to do things. And so that's why I would also say like early in whenever you come in, like you could come in and you could want to change the whole world, but you
Right.
should get some quick wins under your belt with little things that are going to show like, hey, I care about the end user, so that way people trust you more with the big stuff.
Interesting. That's really cool. All right, cool. Let's dive into a little bit of the system side of things. You moved in Sana. Like, what were from a systems and tools and process place? What was like target one, target two for you? And I'd like you to think about it in terms of like, great, if you were to like get a new role tomorrow and you were completely blind, was that the good target one, target two? Like, that's generally where like you should be, or is there something else when you're going into a new situation from a systems and tooling standpoint that you think would be better?
One of the things I did almost right away was tried to figure out who was in which system and which systems were and what was even the like uh cadence of like renewals that we were on for
Okay.
all the tools. There
Yeah.
were a lot of tools here, far more than I've usually seen. It's a pretty large tech
Uh,
stack. And there's a lot of different moving parts of the business. And so I started just like I literally was like mind mapping like this team's in this tool. And then I built out like a Google sheet that showed me like how much we were spending on different tools and things like that. And then I was kind of like evaluating, you know, when's that renewal coming up and does it make sense? Like, what does this tool even do?
right.
So that was actually, I think, almost step one. And then also like Salesforce, your CRM has always got to be like your it's the lifeblood of the rest of the organization for a sales team, right? So
Right.
and then diving in to whatever your CRM is and looking to see where's the like pitfalls and things like that and like what's happening there that's causing these friction points elsewhere. But I think so it's kind of two parts, right? Like pick one that you're going to go do quick fixes on, but also make sure you're like analyzing what the whole system is. Because a lot of times you're not aware that this tool way over here is impacting, you know,
Yeah.
this one. And also like, I mean, if you can find a tool where you can cut, $12,000 like that,
Yeah.
that's a big win for everybody, right? You
Right.
just
Right.
justified your value almost instantly.
So there's 2 signals, again, I haven't thought about. So if you're in go-to-market technology sales, a new RevOps leader should be like trigger number 1, right? Like the first thing they're gonna try to do is understand what's the tech stack, what's kind of sprawled, and then great, like who's using what. At a role I had 3 or 4 roles ago, for opportunity management, reps were going into, Outreach, Jiminy, Cluster, and one other tool that's escaping me, 4 different ones, and they just picked randomly which one they would use. There was no rhyme or reason. So we had 8 reps and 4 opportunity management tools. Like, why are you using, I use this one for this and this one for this. There's no rhyme or reason for that, right? So like there's one, it would almost be like a great exercise there. And 2, from like a churn standpoint, customer success and go to market, same deal, right? Like new rev ops leader, cool. Like churn alarms. Let me make sure that they understand, hey, 70% of your reps are using it. They're using it for this. It's almost like I should send a white paper over really quick. Let me make your job really simple as to what my tool is doing for your organization. That'd be a good signal on both ends.
Yes, like yeah, you want to get if there's a new RevOps leader, you want to get them in quickly and you want to show them the value and make sure they understand your tool very swiftly if you're a person selling to a RevOps leader. And I think that that's something that vendors forget. They think, oh, it's just fine. There's a sales leader that loves me. A good sales leader is going to give all their tools to the RevOps person and
Yeah,
bow
right.
out. Like they're
Yeah,
going to like follow. And I've seen it go both ways, but in general, the sales leaders that are the most successful with tools are the ones who like let their RevOps leader just have it
yeah,
and go. And so if you're a vendor selling to a RevOps person, and a new one comes in, yeah, you better be showing up and saying, this is what value I bring to you. This is what we're here for.
yeah,
I want to like partner with you. What's your big concerns? And as a RevOps leader who's in that situation, you don't want to just immediately decide to cut
no,
it, right?
yeah,
You want to go see, you want to test. The reason you're building a list is because you need to go look at what's up and you want to know which priority order with renewal cycles
yeah.
of when you should be reviewing them, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah, a really smart customer success manager would serve that up to you in the back. Like, hey, it's day one. Here's your like, I'll give you two paragraphs. If you like this, you don't have to worry about us, or you do have to worry about us, but that would be really a really intense, like good signal. Like something's gonna shift along the way. Interesting. Okay, cool. So again, you're in Sana for like say 6, 9, 12 months. So look at 2027 for a moment. You're probably still in like great baseline mode for your vision of like what could happen in order to make the revenue team more efficient 2027 beyond. What are your thoughts on like either technology or processes that should change or could be something that you look at once you get past these table stakes, boots on the ground kind of work?
Yeah, well, we're actually starting to dive into it now. There's a lot that I think scaling is one of the most underrated tools for RevOps,
Okay.
um, in general. They're just like tools, skill sets. How do you scale your reps to do more? My last company, I got measured by how many hours I saved a rep a week.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, interesting.
how do I take what we have within existing, and I think this is going to become the bigger and bigger challenge for RevOps teams. How do I take, if I have one salesperson that's doing X, how do I 2X that for that salesperson?
Okay.
And it may not be like 100% 2X, like it might be that you cut like overhead in some way for something or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
But the goal is you're scaling revenue without scaling headcount. That is
Okay.
going to be the RevOps challenge.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where we're at definitely in Sana, and I expect to use different AI tools and different other things to just scale things without having to be crazy about headcount, right? We need efficiency gains. This isn't
Yeah.
about doing, all these crazy big things again, some of them, but
Right.
some of them are going to be like whole process overhauls. If we've been doing
Right.
something since the company started, it's time to look at a different way to do it. And I think that that's true of all organizations is you should walk in and cautiously, because I always hate, like, there's that good, there's a reason it's a good phrase is like, don't, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right.
That is true. Like, and it might work. So you have to ask yourself, is it working at the scale that we're going to need? Because any organization, when you're trying to grow yourself, like if you're growing, 2%, then yeah, it's probably fine. But if you're going to try to grow, I don't know, let's just make up a 10x number,
Yeah.
your system that works at, 1 million isn't going to work at 10 million,
Yeah. Right.
and that's, I think, where it gets really tough to decide which pieces are going to matter. But the main thing I think that scaling your sales teams by implementing tools and processes, not just tools,
Yeah.
that work well is going to be what changes your business's profitability um, over time.
Gotcha.
And that's kind of, I think, the
Yeah.
message that I'm trying to get.
Let me ask this. So I'm like founder turned into like a sales guy over time. I've only been in sales, let's say, for like 8, 9 years at this point. To me, that always been the mantra of RevOps? How do I grow revenue without growing headcount? Is that a new mantra or is that something that's been around for the past 10 years?
I mean, RevOps has only barely been around for
Right. That's a good
4,
point.
if you really
Yeah.
like look at it.
Yeah.
Um, I think that there's always been this salespeople be on the phones more
Yeah.
and do that. And that's where there's a little bit of a question there, right? Of like sales, like they're expected to cut the time and grow the revenue. And so a lot of times people think that that means they're going to immediately see this like revenue jump.
Right.
However, there's a couple other components that I think people forget about. Okay, I just cut 2 hours per rep because I implemented some tool and it's great.
Yeah.
What are the reps doing with those extra 2 hours? In theory,
Right.
sales leaders are like, oh, that means that they should be, increasing their sales by 20% if they got 2 more hours a day. Well,
Right.
what did you actually require that the salesperson do to drive an extra 20% of revenue with that
Right.
extra 2 hours a week?
Right.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Um, then what's the point? So I
Yeah.
think that it's always been there. I think the other piece of it is I do think that yes, you're doing it, but I think people forget when you're talking more like about like EBITDA or things like that is like you might not immediately see this huge revenue gain. Hopefully you do.
Right.
But are
Yeah.
you also seeing like a significant savings in your cost things,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
I think that it's dangerous to assume your RevOps is failing just because revenue is not necessarily going up.
Yeah.
It could be that you're seeing increased, especially if it's like if you have renewal cycles or things like that. Maybe your renewal cycle is actually better.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of people only focus on the new business side. Maybe there's a lot of barriers to success. Are you seeing customer satisfaction improve because the processes are going up, right? RevOps is in charge of the customer
Yeah.
buying journey for the most part, or it should be.
And so this comes to like a mini like core thesis that I'm not 100% sure about, but something that I've been circling around for about 18 months now is like quota and revenue attainment for reps really haven't shifted in terms of like real dollars since like the 80s, right? So like in the 80s, your quota was like 400, 500K. That's what you expected to bring in revenue wise. You didn't have a computer, right? So like on your desk. And
Hmm.
so in real dollars, it's the same as $1 million quota now, right? So like, and last year, I think it was 81% of reps missed that like $1 million quota, right? With a lot of fluff here, right? So like, we're not hitting our quota targets after like 30 years of an evolution of sale technology and sales technology, right? So we haven't really done anything to make it so that a rep could sell more. And I want you to tell me where I'm wrong in just a moment too. So what does that mean, right? Like, so like when you look at, I agree, most of the time when you don't increase costs and you increase revenue, it's because you found a much more efficient way to a tap an untapped revenue source. Most people aren't doing increases on an annual basis like they should be, or how you're upselling new products is a really challenging piece. Unlocking upselling of a new product. This is how you get more efficient. On the sales side, unless quota per rep is going up, right? We haven't really done anything to make it so we put a process in place so they could sell more in the same amount of time. And so like and quota per rep, unfortunately, has to go up without cost per rep going up. Eventually, like if it becomes twice as easy to sell because of technology, reps need to do a $2 million quota on 5% commission. Otherwise, we haven't done anything. We just replaced the number of people we needed, right? So, like from a business financial standpoint, I'm okay with like a societal issue. Like, I'm great. Like everyone just work less and make the same money. That's cool, right? But like if like a rep is just selling more and you have less reps and they make paid the same, nobody got better for it. So like I actually think now we're on the precipice of that evolution. I think computers didn't do it. And databases like Salesforce didn't do it for reps. I think now you have a point where you can have tools that drive rep efficiency. What apart that little rant that I try to avoid when I'm a host of a podcast, am I wrong about? Like, what am I wrong, or what are you like exceedingly agreed with in that little diatribe?
First off, I find it fascinating that like the quota thing, and that's a good point. And I have seen like them increase quotas, right? After like year over year. Like I have seen it.
You could, good,
I
okay,
don't think that they're as sometimes they are like I would say that the reps are like they're way too aggressive, right? Like
right,
they don't see how they're gonna make that. And we could get into a whole conversation about inflation and all those things about
right,
it if
yeah,
we wanted to.
right,
But that's not here, they're there. But it is interesting when you consider it. And it's like if the RevOps team is scaling that much, then yes, they should be able to scale as well that much. But what it
right,
ends up being, in my experience, sometimes is you're asking me to do more. Mr. Salesperson's mad because you're asking me to do more. And Mr. Salesperson will say, it's RevOps's fault that it didn't work.
yeah, okay,
And
right,
so, like, instead of it being like a RevOps is like guiding the conversation, it's a reverse thing of like, no, all these things are wrong in our systems and tools, and that's why I can't achieve it. But it's not. the RevOps person often isn't empowered to be the person to like set the tools. Like they have a certain amount of autonomy,
Right.
but they don't always get to say, well, this is what the sales process should be, right?
Right.
They're partnering with the sales leaders, and the sales leaders are hearing from their sales reps saying, well, Chantel, it's the page layout. That's the problem again.
Right.
And so then RevOps is now having to like deal with this random fire thing that has become an issue that probably wasn't the main issue.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And so it's a tough balance. And that's where like RevOps leaders have to learn how to say no. But again, you're trying to get a paycheck. So at some point, you can only say no so
Right.
many times
Right.
before
Right.
you
Right.
are.
Yeah. Yeah. And you just gotta go with it. Right.
RevOps
Yeah.
is a constant battle of trying to make sure that you're making your end user happy enough to do it, but also trying to change how the world is functioning on a day-to-day basis to improve it. And the gap there is often like where you're seeing like the most tension between them or where people get really mad at RevOps. And yeah, so those not an easy it's not an easy thing, right? And I would also say that this is where RevOps teams, I think, are usually have less soft skills
Right.
than the
Okay.
teams that they're supporting. And like, right, you're usually working with marketers and salespeople are your primary people. Salespeople are obviously good
Right.
at selling something. They can convince
Right.
you anything, right? Like,
Right. 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 Right.
your
Yeah.
top salespeople, they've convinced me to do all sorts of things because, yeah, they're good salespeople. And I do want to make them happy because they're making the company money. But,
Right.
and then like you got your marketers who are going to like tell you a beautiful story and all these things. And then you got your RevOps person who's like, well, let me just tell
Like,
you in a very complex like fashion about why that won't
yeah.
work.
Right.
And
Right.
like
Right.
it just is such a bad like thing in all of this. And so yeah, that's kind of a weird long explanation to
Yeah, I
say
mean, it's
that
like the
I
operator
agree with
title,
you.
right? Yeah, there's part of it like, so that's all operators in all industries, right? And then let's say we talk about like there's a go-to-market engineering kind of term
Yeah.
that is out there, which is excellent. It's just a different name for RevOps people, right? So like we could just that's what we're always
It's
process
a
engineering
yeah.
in revenue teams is what RevOps has been doing for a long time.
Yep.
So like I like go-to-market engineering better than revenue operations because I think it is more fundamental. But from an engineering standpoint, when you're process engineering something you're doing it from the outside looking in for people that are like, well, they didn't do the job. So it is a pure, I'm an industrial engineer. It's a pure change management exercise, right? But there's also the aspect of this. Let's say you truly did implement a process that saves sellers 2 hours a day, right? Cool. Sounds good. That's
Mhm.
awesome. One, that's fantastic. That's if an 8 hour day, that's a 25% improvement. Cool. What did you fill that time up with? If they didn't have more pipeline, good qualified pipeline to go after, you didn't fill the time up with anything that's going to get you a revenue increase. So the one, you're back to a pipeline problem, which I hate putting pipeline at the root of everything, but in this case, it's the root of it. Cool. If I can give them more meat pipeline to fill that time, great. So let's say you didn't fill it up with more pipeline. What did you fill it up with? Administrative work that they didn't do before, or like training that isn't as value added as it should be. You didn't fill the bucket back up with more revenue. They can't take most of the time. I've never gotten into an organization. They're like, you know what? We have my reps. I could be giving them more meetings than they can't take it because they're too busy with admin. So I got to figure out the admin piece. That's not what's happening, right? It might be they're not doing other things that could help close deals because they're kind of running from meeting to meeting, but doubtful, right? So like we have to like work both sides of those coins. The efficiency aspect, if it's a pure efficiency play to save them time that's non-value added, non-selling time, you got to fill the bucket back up. Or just say, hey, great. Like, know what's cool about selling benefits? Our sales reps hit $1 million in quota a year in 5 hours a day. And then make that your like pitch, right? Like, and that's cool because we're so efficient that all you have to do is sell. But I don't have enough pipeline to give you an $8 million 8 hour day. So like that would be like
No.
that would be the pitch from a Asana benefits standpoint, which would be funny.
I think yeah, and I think that's where like it gets really hard because then you start to dip your toes more into the marketing side. And then
Okay.
this is where the blame game happens with like sales and marketing, right? Like whose job is it to drive pipeline?
Yeah.
And
Right.
why are we not driving pipeline? And I think
Yeah.
that that's where RevOps puts itself into a very dangerous place where it can offend people
Yeah.
very easily because, or they can end up being the scapegoat in a pipeline conversation.
Right.
Um, where marketing and sales meet, there's always a little bit of tension, unfortunately. It's just part of
Yeah.
the nature of it. Um, but I agree, pipeline is often
Yeah.
the problem. And if pipeline isn't the problem, like I've seen it, it's maybe it's a close rate or something like that. And it
Right.
just
Yeah.
that's more of like a sales training issue. But I also think right now too, most RevOps teams are staffed to addressing administrative problems once they finally realize that. So your pipeline has finally got good enough. Now your reps are annoyed. So then you bring in someone, but really you're just
Right.
bringing in a low level operator to like remove basic friction. You're
Right.
not
Yeah.
bringing someone in usually to say, let's fundamentally change how we do business so that we do it better. And let's fundamentally change. And to your point, if you're going to do that, you also bring in you need to bring in a strong pipeline generation system. And when we're talking about pipeline gen, is that RevOps? There's parts of it that are
Yeah.
because like revisiting and bringing old ops back up and those kinds of things. But if we're talking about straight up new business, that's less so. And
Yeah.
that's where it gets tough.
I've never spoken to someone in go-to-market operations that wasn't at the forefront of the tension between sales and marketing, which drives me insane. In that I don't understand why there's any tension between sales and marketing. If you have a VP of sales and a VP of marketing, the pipeline number is both your problems, no matter what. No matter what hole in the bucket there is, whether it's in sales or marketing, it does not matter. You're either generating enough pipeline or you aren't, and it's your two jobs to fix it, no matter what. And this never happens. I can't contemplate why this isn't the common ethos and why, as a VP of sales, I would ever be mad at my marketing leader. I attribute it to one thing, but I'd love to hear your perspective on that as one of the last questions as we wrap up here.
Yeah, I think that it's because, and this is where, like, again, the difference between RevOps and the rest of your org is probably a lot of just operations teams in general. RevOps thinks of the business, right?
Okay.
What makes the business better? What makes the customer journey better? Because from the customer's perspective, they don't care where they're at with the
Right.
marketing versus the salesperson, right? They're concerned about the journey. It's one picture to them. You know, your company is the one face of the company. They don't understand it internally. But internally, there becomes these tension points, right? And I think a big crux of the issue is that marketing numbers and attribution numbers are honestly magic math to some extent. Like attribution is just like
Yeah.
it's an art, not a science.
Yeah.
And so where sales has these like firm hard numbers of I sold $100 worth of things, and marketing's like, well, I contributed to 50% of that, and sales is like, really, prove it.
Yeah.
And and it creates this tension because people are worried they're going to get fired because of it, right? Like so it becomes more about, well, it's their fault for doing it, and it's their fault for doing it, and they're making up a bunch of numbers that don't make sense. And well, we did have to obviously contribute to some of your dollars, otherwise you wouldn't have anything because we had leads that we patched you and you didn't log
Right.
them right. And like it becomes this whole thing, and it's like, well, obviously, and then it come back to RevOps where it's like, well, RevOps didn't make it build a system that's good enough to track it all the way through. And it's like, whoa, like
Yeah. Right.
everybody's just at each other's throats when it
Yeah.
really, yes, I agree. They should be in there and doing those things. And like, you and I had chatted a little bit about offsites. This is actually where offsites are very good because it can help break down those walls and like make people human again.
Yeah.
Um, and I think
That's the
that
point.
more teams need to work on doing that. And if you can keep a RevOps team that's a true marketing ops and sales ops team, it can help bridge that gap between the two of them. Because oftentimes what sales and marketing needs is a translator, and RevOps can function like that well. Because
Right.
if I say conversion rate, what's the immediate thing that you think of with conversion rate?
Conversion rate for me is pure meeting to qualified opportunity is what I think about from a
Okay.
sales standpoint.
Now, from a marketing perspective, it's probably originally web to lead conversion.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then also like I'm as a RevOps leader, I think when I think of conversion, I can think of like 5 different points of conversion rates that
Yeah.
I need to be tracking. But if I just say it in a
It's true.
general thing,
Yeah.
what does it mean? And so a lot
Yeah.
of times like there's a translation issue between sales and marketing.
Yep.
And also there's just like, I'm not sure if you've ever seen the color blocks of
Okay.
like
No. Yeah.
things. These are like the different like
I love
personality like
RevOps.
types that live
Okay.
inside like those things. And red is the one it says is be bright, be brief, be bright, be gone. Blue
Okay.
is give me details. Yellow's involve me. Green show me you care.
Okay.
Marketing people tend to live down here.
Oh, wow.
Salespeople tend to live more like up here in my experience.
Yeah.
RevOps leaders definitely are in these categories, so they work a little bit better with salespeople I've seen.
Okay. Yeah.
And but when you're just considering like the general people that are like, not that it's 100%, but in general, people are drawn to careers that align with their personalities and things like that. And There's just
Yeah.
that natural tension of salespeople who are blunt and aggressive and get told no for a living,
Right.
and the marketing people who are more like flowers and sunshine.
Right.
And I think that people don't want to just say that sometimes, but you can't underestimate just how much personality differences can clash.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about the personality differences, and this is probably again only a RevOps person would bust out blocks like that. So that was amazing. And it's probably actually the sales mentality where I don't, which is wrong because the personality aspect is what I'm thinking about. It's a behavioral science. It's a process, and behavioral science is all sales, which is I love it now and thought I would never like it because I didn't realize that's what it was. But to me, the fundamental tension is actually then more black and white, like which is funny because it's then doesn't it's completely wrong because I haven't thought about this personality aspect of it. Is like as a sales leader, why I think there's such as a CRO, I would tell my VP of sales and my VP of marketing, we either have enough pipeline. If you're winning 25% of your work and we only have 3x coverage, this is both of your problems. If I find you arguing about whose problem it is rather than solving the problem, I'm going to fire you both, right? Like there's no way to separate a qualified opportunity between who contributed to it. You have the interest awareness stage of like buyer's journey is completely intertwined between sales and marketing. You can't differentiate why someone outbounded or someone inbounded someone. And whenever the final way they got into the booking that meeting is irrelevant in my mind as a CRO. So I don't care, right? So attribution's irrelevant to me. On the flip, what I think there's a fundamental tension where like marketing gets dollars to spend on stuff that isn't people. So like I give you $1 million, right? Like to run ads and go to conferences, right? So not to like oversimplify the marketing aspect. Where in sales, you also got $1 million to hire 8 people, but it doesn't seem like that. People doesn't seem like spend. And so for marketing, I'm like, great, I gave you $1 million. What did I get out of it? Sales
That's true.
doesn't answer that question the same way. And so
No,
that
that's so
tension be
true.
like, if sales is like, great, give me that million. I'll hire 8 BDRs. We'll be fine, right? No, like the dollar explicitness of the dollars in the marketing sense adds some weird tension between the two functions. That's
It really
also
does.
irrelevant. It doesn't matter how, like, what you spent it on. It's just a visual. So again, tell me where I'm wrong or what you might might agree on in there.
I love that perspective because you're so right. Because I do believe that marketing teams get undersold because there's like this need to like have them prove it now. That's like I said, which attribution, like whatever.
Yeah,
And yes, do teams need to be measured to prove that they're doing things well? And are
of
there
course.
ways to do that effectively? Yes, there are. But at the end of the day, it's a rough estimate of how marketing contributed. But you're right. Like $1 million is in headcount versus the other one. One of those is just a wash operating expense. One of them needs to show that they did $1 million meant that they got $10 million.
Right.
And that can be really hard sometimes as a marketing team, especially if something goes wrong on the rev operations team,
Right.
or especially if sales is just not following processes that have been set in stone that they're supposed to do, or just because, maybe you did $1 million worth of display ads and you got in 20 million calls. But
Yeah.
how do you track 20 million calls from an awareness campaign?
Agreed. Exactly right. And if I have like 4x coverage on a 25% win rate and I'm hitting my target and I'm like, great, marketing spend 10 million bucks. On one hand, like I want to know, like, could I spend that money differently within marketing or with marketing and sales? But on the other hand, if I booked every single meeting on an outbound call, I still don't know that that wasn't because I spent $10 million in awareness based advertising. Right. So like
And
that's,
that's,
you
yeah,
can't, if I was a sales leader, I was like, great, cut all 10 million of that. My pipeline generation is going to drop in half at least. Unless it's completely blind, unless the marketing leader doesn't know where the money went or who looked at it or whatever, like it was the case,
yes,
then that's a problem. But if you're like, yeah, I got this spend in front of people that ended up booking meetings, then who cares? Like it's just pipe gen. So like get your pipe
yes,
number and fix it. So
yes,
this
yes.
tension drives me insane. It really bothers me. So sorry you hit a nerve. Great.
No, I'm here for it.
Yeah, this is because I'm a founder and not a sales guy. So if I was a 20-year sales guy, I'm sure I'd hate my VP of marketing all the time. So anyway, last piece. What do you like? What do you think the RevOps looks like 3 years out? Like, let's talk. You have a take on this go-to-market engineering, RevOps, the evolution?
Yeah.
Is it RevOps finally getting to do the job it always wanted to do, or is there an evolution that's happening?
I think that there's more RevOps people out there than there ever have been. It was one of the fastest growing careers for a while, right? I'm I'm seeing more and more VPs of RevOps, which tells me that the strategic value is becoming more of an awareness thing, right? Let's be
Okay.
honest, directors are usually heavy player coaches in the
Right.
RevOps
Yeah.
space. VP, I hope, is less of a um, player than usual. It's usually a sign of when you've fully transitioned to the coach role. And so I'm hopeful on that. When it comes to GTM engineers, I think GTM engineers have a place on a RevOps team. Like if I was going to structure my dream RevOps team, you know,
Okay. Give it to me.
I
Yeah.
would probably have, I'd probably have one GTM engineer if for a smaller team. And that would be the person who I expect to be able to do all the complex builds, right? Like I'm helping strategize like what the vision looks like. And then I have this GTM engineer that can go build the complex stuff. And then I'd have some marketing operations operators and a couple sales operations operators. And like sales operations tends to be more administrative work at the baseline. So I'd have some people doing that because the reality is we still need a place where people stand in the way of automation. A lot of that is still related to like sentiment and like things like that. AI is going to replace more and more probably sales operations would be where I'm guessing there's
Interesting.
more replacement. Marketing operations, functionally, I don't see that role ever really changing. I think the big thing is that they might need to get better at some of the CRM side and
Okay.
just like, the more senior sales operators who are probably going to become GTM engineers need to be really good at the marketing side. You can't just know one side of the house,
Right.
is my guess in a few years, because that switch from when it goes from a marketing qualified lead to a sales qualified lead, that pain point there where it's happening and like being able to track things all the way through, you can't just understand one side of the house to be successful. But I think that that's something everybody knows at the senior levels of RevOps right now. So I think it'll just solidify more. I'm hopeful that more and more sales and marketing leaders are going to respect RevOps and give them a seat at the table.
That's a really good
I'm
call.
hopeful.
Yeah. I think most people don't realize that sales is much more process based than people understand. They think it's fuzzy relationship. And there's no kind of like step through as to like what happens in a buyer's journey to decide to buy a service or a product, right? It's completely untrue. It's process based, right? It's not perfect. No one adheres to it. It's not like a manufacturing line that step 1, step 2, step 3 happens. But obviously there's a pretty good through line through the fuzzy steps that someone takes that can
Hopefully your
give you a
RevOps
baseline
process shows that.
yeah,
right? Like,
agreed. And so like there's it's even more important than like product ops or something like that because it really is a complex process from I heard about your company to now you're managing me as a customer. That end-to-end loop is fundamental and the steps through are really fantastic. Chantelle, this is a really excellent conversation. If one of our listeners wanted to reach out to you or connect with you, where would they do it?
LinkedIn is probably the best way. You're more than welcome to come send me a message directly on there. I love responding to messages on LinkedIn. I actually keep up on top of them. So that's probably the best way.
Do it. That's how we met and do an excellent job. Chantelle's a great follow. She has some funny LinkedIn posts as well, so that are professional but humorous all the time. So really appreciate your take here. And thank you for taking the time with us today.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate you having me.
Take care.